Okay, so after looking at Muramasa, at least from Otaku Daikun, I was about to look at Saya, but I was like, hold on, let me find out a little bit more about Nameless EMIYA and then, all the Fate Extra type of stuff, and then, all the other EMIYAs that are a part of this series. And then after that, I'll just go back to the Muramasa thing. And yeah, just learn from Saya, from a different perspective, how he views Muramasa and, tells his tale or his story, get some lore from him. Yeah, just start this up here. Hope you guys will enjoy this. Make sure you like, subscribe, and yeah, let's see what Saya has for us today.
So I've been gearing up to get into some extroverse content, so where better to start than here? Now, we've talked about pretty much every version of EMIYA at least once, but we've yet to do a deep dive on this extroverse counterpart, Nameless. So going back to the
Nameless.
top, in the BB video, I talked about how the origin of the Fate Extra timeline itself stemmed from a divergence where all of the magical energy that was in the air was starting to dry up, presumably from a ritual. This led the Stay Night timeline into becoming the Extra timeline by the 2030s. In this timeline, the story considers that the Fifth Grail War did take place, like normal, and Shiro ends up surviving. A lot like Kirisugu, he starts to become a vigilante for the people. In fact, when Nameless starts to justify his character, he details the incident where Kirisugu went through the plane crash and ended up having to take it down, though he ends up being left unnamed. But his whole point was that he was trying to explain the manner that he deals with things, forfeiting a small number of lives to save the larger number, and how both of them are equally blameless, but if one had to go, of course, in his mind, it has to be the former.
Yeah, so that was unfortunate right there, what he had to do.
Hunt down criminals and put them in their place. People that were trying to get over the system. Anybody that thought that they could get an upper hand in society would be dealt with accordingly if he had anything to do with it. This stems from the event that happened when he was younger. The fire that took over Fuyuki Park is described to be something a little different. He tells us that it was more battle driven and that there were soldiers involved with guns mercilessly taking down everybody in sight. It even flat out says that there was a torrent of blood coming out while this was happening. You see buildings falling to the side, the city is in rubble.
Just a tragedy.
Lead you to believe that it was a war zone, that at least some type of bombing was going on. Most importantly, he brings up the fact that he was the only one that survived, dubbing the origins of this timeline's version of his survivor's guild. Whereas Archer had his goals more so influenced by Kirisugu, Nameless goals were influenced by being the only one that made it out the disaster, and therefore he felt like he owed it to them as the survivor to keep that ball rolling. Despite him being this vigilante, he was getting some heavy support. He had a group of friends, he had a significant other, both of them being unnamed, that would push his goals when he went out to purge crime. You can even see this in his old flashbacks. Two of those implied friends are off in the background standing on the steel beams. In his past, he was still a decent magus, just like FSN Archer. He wore his skin out and his hair via his use of magecraft. And then you can see that he's holding a sniper rifle. That was one of his go-to weapons. A true archer indeed. For his significant other,
is Ren
implied that
okay?
This is the OG version of Ren. Though Nameless being nameless, he's too embarrassed to admit it, and he insists that she had nothing to do with it. They didn't have that type of relationship. Eventually, there came a point when one of his friends started to notice a change in his
who's that picture to the right?
Cleanse the evil, he was starting to become one, and this led one of his friends to handing him over to the authorities. His fate was decided in court, and much like the original, he was then sentenced to his demise. Around that same time, the 2030s, the moon cell started to arise, and Shiro made a contract with it. This is the huge difference between his OG version that took a contract with the liar, the side of the counterforce that hails over humanity. In the case of Nameless, the world was already starting to be digitized, and the moon cell was taking its place. Earth was decaying, and now everything was taking place on the moon. In the final act of the original Archer, I'm sure you recall that
some actual footage, okay?
He ended up getting in between it. Well, in this case, there was a nuclear core meltdown, and somebody had to go in to stop it. So he decided to do the honors. This included him bypassing their security, which by his own words is like passing through 10 levels of the arena in Fate Extra. Extremely difficult.
Oh, so
you can die
that's who was in that picture, I'm guessing.
But for him, he had to pull it off in less than an hour, and that's when he took his contract. Now, by law of the Moon Cell, the supercomputer that now has all of the data on Earth, it turned him into its own version of a Guardian. This actually ended up working out better for him than the original, because as a Guardian for the Moon Cell, he didn't have to go out and continue taking out his own kind so much. So a big part of his burden was lifted there. The task was completed, but again, he was now stuck in this cycle. Now, for the power plant, usually fate events tend to align with catastrophes that happen in real life, but this event predates Fukushima, and it also post-dates Chernobyl by a mile. So though it may be years apart on the timeline, if that event were based on anything, it's more than likely going to be Chernobyl. Plenty of great documentaries on that. Mass amounts of radiation flooded into the area, affecting it for years and even now. He further explains that upon him becoming a Guardian, he has now forfeited the right to his name, EMIYA, and he has now become the moniker of Nameless.
Nameless.
Nameless embodiment of all the heroes.
Okay, I see him with the
accounted for. There are some
something new
in this character, but at its base, he's still a lot like the original. Most of the difference comes in the background and the skill set. But all in all, this makes them two completely distinct beings, and the story tries to hammer that down a lot. So that's Fate Extra. Going into Fate Extra CCC, the sequel, now this is almost impossible to find a translation for, but I'm gonna try to break it down here. There's a lot to unpack. So for the main character, there's Hakuno, who is the boy, and then there's Hakunan, who is the girl.
Okay, so
they have similar outcomes, but they
main
also
characters
have deviations in their character as well. Going back to the state of the world, it's the 2030s. The world is decaying, which means the resources are starting to get scarce. The Earth is meant to be a lot like a prequel to the World of Notes. Not exactly, but it's in that realm. Barring the invasion and all the other things that they had going on, the world hasn't died yet. It wasn't to that point, so it didn't call out to the types yet. But in the meantime, this is where Extra comes in. The Moon Cell, again, is this super database, and it has all the information of the things going down on Earth. And what it's doing is reprojecting its own world via Earth's information based on its own principles. So the Hakunos that you see most of the time in the Extraverse, they're technically digitized. The real Hakunos are actually in a cryogen coffin. Turns out that they were inflicted with the disease that causes you to lose your memory over time until you're no longer.
Dang.
And there was nobody around that could cure this.
Yeah.
So they decided, let's just throw them in the cryogen until we can find a cure. And while they're in this state, this is where all of the extra timeline happens in between. Their soul has been uniquely pulled into the Moon Cell Holy Grail War. But I say all that to say this. Everything on the Moon Cell's plane, which is Seraph, is supposed to get deleted once the war is over, including the main character, which means that they should also die in real life too. Usually the main servants find a way to circumvent this by the end of the story, and it turns out alright. Those main servants were Gilgamesh, Tamamo, Nero, and EMIYA. For Gilgamesh, Tamamo, and Nero, they all managed to find a way. You know, Gil is a primordial, at least in the context that he's one of the first spirits ever. Tamamo is a beast candidate, and Nero is also a beast candidate. So when it comes to finding a way of circumventing this deletion, they figure it out. But a lot like I mentioned in his Don't Sleep, EMIYA is just EMIYA. They win, but instead of going forward like the other teams, the Hakunos and Nameless both end up getting deleted. However, their journey wasn't all for nothing. Turns out that the Moon Cell ended up giving them their old lives back on the planet.
Alright, okay.
Specifically for his ending. This means that the Hakunos
so yeah, still worked out somehow, some way.
And Nameless is back in his original.
Oh, you got it animated, okay.
Shiro. The catch
some of that.
is that they no longer know each other, but fortunately their disease got treated. So the Hakanos wake up after this and they start to detail the state of the world. Japan is no longer Japan, it's a wasteland. The countries in the West decided to forego the advancement of technology and focus solely on capital. So while the world is already in this decaying state, they're going around all these countries and putting the final nail in the coffin. By this point, the West had took 60% of the world's resources, leaving a lot of people cut short.
In a
And
breath.
the population is just continuing to climb.
I mean, that was
Japan
quick.
being one of them. And this explains a lot of the opening that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, how Nameless said that when the people came, they had guns, and it wasn't just about the fire. It was these same Western countries coming in to take over everything. There has been a few mentions that the East tried to fight back, but they couldn't unify the way that the West did, so it didn't work. So on the timeline, the Hakanos were frozen around the 2000s and they woke up around the 2030s. The Hakanos actually mentioned that the Western countries wanted them. They had a bounty on his head. They had posters out for his capture. They wanted the main character in their possession. So they ended up fleeing to the Middle East and got taken in by a refugee camp. By now, Hakano is really out of tune with the world. They just woke up and things are a lot different now. They
Yeah, a
decided
lot.
to join a group so they would have a more status quo roadmap. A group that can teach them about things that's going on, get them up to speed. Eventually, the Hakanos start to think about their past, their family, their friends, everything else in their homeland that was taken away from them, and it's starting to weigh down on them really heavy. They kind of want to give up. You got to give me some credit for surviving this far, but all things considered, what's the point? Is it even worth it now? I'm at my limit. And right in that moment, the alive Shiro reaches his hand out and tells them that he's gonna be their new combat instructor. He's gonna be the one that's gonna give them private lessons for the next 6 months. The Hakanos are exhausted, they can barely stand right now, so Shiro lifts them up off the ground, and the Hakanos start to notice that he looks familiar, but they can't exactly tell why, because again, that connection has been erased. But they ask anyway, "Do I know you?" And Shiro says, "I have no idea what you're talking about." But deep down in Hakano's heart, even though they don't have the memory, they still have this feeling that they now have the right person at
It's
their
like it
side.
don't matter,
They
you
feel
still
like they can go on.
got that
Just
feeling.
meeting up with Shiro has now revitalized their will to fight, saying that, okay, well, one chapter is finished, but that doesn't mean that that has to be the end of my journey. We got to get back to it. They proceed into that journey, and that's how his story ends in CCC, which is very appropriate when you think about his character, considering he's always the one that's the all ball out, and it still turned out fine. Now for the next sequel, Fate Extella. Here we go through
On
some
the
more
Switch,
changes.
okay.
Due to that divergence that I mentioned earlier, Nameless is no longer a part of
Foreigner
the main
without
cast
a
like
name.
He was an extra in CCC, but he still finds a way to come into the story through other means. Again, he is still a guardian, so he's gonna get summoned.
Oh, yeah, I didn't realize. Yeah, you got the.
version
Okay, no, I seen that.
Extella
Yeah.
serves as an alternate form
Him with
of
the all
himself
black?
that appeared in the games before. In Extella, he ends up being one of the generals for Nero. This is due to their battle against Safar, the White Titan. That's the main boss. When he interacts with Cucullin, he tells us that he remembers Hakano and that he knows them way better than Ku does. So right off the bat, it lets us know, although Hakano isn't the one that summoned him, he still remembers. He also tells Archimedes when he runs into him, he would rather be called Archer while he's in this form. Though Archimedes is stuck to calling him no name regardless. He's fixated on it. And the reason Nameless is saying this is likely due to the bond that he grew with Hakano. He has a soft spot for that moniker now, because in order for them to reach that point, they had to open up and bond with each other. And he doesn't want to just throw around that moniker indiscriminately. He wants to leave it where it is. He also tells us that when he runs into Joan, her discernment can't work against him because technically he's a nobody. nobody. So the very fact that he's
placeholder for someone without much of a
heroes
backstory.
with no name, Joan, who is technically one of the strongest servants via Moon Cell, that's why she got summoned. One of her main abilities is flat out negated, which is hilarious. While being nobody, he's still
just a
gets the
John
benefit of
Doe.
being this embodiment of heroes all at the same time. He even makes jokes about it, saying that he might as well be John Doe. He points out the fact that he already knows that she's working under the White Titan, and she's shocked because this is information that shouldn't even be available to him yet. And this just reinforces the fact that his existence is above the average, or at the very least, it's an irregularity. When he has another interaction with Archimedes, this time around he explains that
A world
he's
without
already fought the White
options.
Titan in a different timeline prior to the game. The timeline ended up being a dead end. This is thanks to Altera, who is the avatar for the White Titan, being completely evil. Whereas in the actual game, you get a chance to bond with Altera because of Hakuno, thus leading to a more fortunate outcome. He then tells him that instead of his spirit being erased from Seraph like everybody else, his spirit is one that transitions. That explains his memories being more equipped. He actually survived the timeline that he was in when they fought her, but they didn't have Hakuno, and he ended up wandering into this one. That's Extella. Then you got Fate Extella Link,
Got a little bit
which
more
is the
hair.
sequel to Extella. And this is where we get our first look at his new hair. Now I know a lot of people were wondering, oh, why is his hair like that? This is purely aesthetic. That's all it is. In one of the conversations that he had with Gilgamesh,
Makes him look more older. No.
Banter, and Gil couldn't help but ask, bro, what's happening to your hair? It looks like you're going through a midlife crisis right now. And by his own word, Nameless says that he thought it was time for a change, so he grew it out. So that's the deal with that. A few things to account for going back to Fate Extra CCC. EMIYA admittedly has had a fascination for guns throughout his lifetime. Hints of this in the FGO story, Prisma Ilya, and now here. As a matter of fact, there's elements that
Yeah, I gotta look at him too.
EMIYA Alter is doing
Yep,
now.
definitely got a video on him.
Glorified pistol toter like his father. Like father, like son, what's the problem? So, if you look at the room, EMIYA has guns all over the wall. There's word that he can project
He got something more than that too up top there.
to use them if he had to. And why wouldn't he? We've already seen that he was using them prior to his contract. The main reason that he doesn't use them is because he doesn't find them efficient. He says that it's hard to put magical energy against the bullets, so he just opts for swords instead. For somebody that's not designated as an actual gunner, for him it could only serve as a distraction. His main fascination with guns, specifically the handgun, is how it comes together. He feels like there's a lot of artistical value there, but he doesn't really like using them personally. Then there's his mythological mystic code, which is something that came complementary to the story. The fit is tough, by the way. Basically, it got to the point where BB was so strong, because I've already told y'all that BB is broken, that they needed something to rival her power, so that's what this is. It's a mystic code that puts
Oh, now you see it in game.
It digs into the deepest parts of their origin.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, let me
pulls
see,
the best
get
out
a
of
different
it,
look
but
on
they
that.
can only use it here. So between this outfit and the Nameless and Extella is where EMIYA is at its strongest story-wise. And that's just being due to the nature of how the Moon Cell works. It's not restricted like the Holy Grail. We already know that he can project
1000
like
combo
Excalibur here and he'll be just fine. And then for the last tidbit, the part in Fate Extra Last Encore, the emergence of the golem that looks exactly like EMIYA. Contrary to the OG Fate Extra, Lost Encore takes place a millennium after that. And in between that time, it's said that EMIYA's spirit got used so many times that it started to deteriorate. So that's what we see at the beginning of the story. He's no longer a person anymore and more like a doll.
Okay.
As you can see, he's happy to run into Hakuno for once just before he's released at that time. And you can subtly see him leading Hakuno to Nero's location. The doll even smiled when it was defeated. That's the great bulk of it. Very interesting stuff. And you know we got to get into the other characters.
And that is it for that one. Hold on, let me play it back. Okay, yeah, after being used for so much, yeah, that's what turned into. Got literal like what space in his eyes there as a replacement. But yeah, that is it for Nameless EMIYA, and then yeah, what happened to him in the extra timeline. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back for some of these things because yeah, extra, yeah, well, Fate Extra, yeah, that's just not like a mystery or something to me, but yeah, just something that I really don't know too much about. Like I've seen the game and all, but usually it's just simple things like this, you know, just seeing like certain attacks and all. Maybe if they're being if Saya is talking about like, yeah, don't sleep on someone, he'll probably show like that, probably like the game, like how they actually do moves in there. But yeah, there's a lot of EMIYA I gotta know about, and yeah, I'm gonna get on to some of the others. But I think I'm gonna do like Muramasa or someone after this. Like yeah, just look at the Saya version of that, and then get to the other EMIYAs, and then yeah, whatever else I got planned. Might even do another Don't Sleep On video as well. But yeah, that is it. Nameless is, well, basically origin, you could say, and then connections that he had. Yeah, it's like, you know, you can't tell who it is, but then it's like deep down, it's like you know who it is. It's like, yeah, sometimes it can be like literally all memories, everything could have been erased. I mean, I don't even know, you could have been reborn or something, and still it's like deep down you can still feel like you know this person, you know, and that's just a good thing about it. And if anything, like if it's just simply taking away memories, I mean, well, I don't think it'll be that big, but like muscle memory or something, right? Like certain like the way how you interact with, you know, someone. So yeah, there's certain memory or like that muscle memory that just automatically happens. You know, it's something that your mind can't remember, but at least your body can, at least. It's like a certain handshake, right? It's like a certain handshake or combo attack or something, whatever you may have done with someone. Yeah, that's all you need. And what did he have? Like, yeah, he was literally turning into some. Oh, here we go. Clear shot. Yeah, like, got that on him. I don't know about that. But yeah, that's pretty much about it. And then now I can see, yeah, basically, yeah, what that picture was all about. I'm like, yeah, who is that? Who is that in the picture? Seems important, you know. Because, yeah, I don't know much about the game, but there is story to the game. And there could be little details, even though that one was pretty obvious, I would say. But probably little details in the background that, yeah, you just got to look around for. And yeah, for someone like me who doesn't even know anything about it, I'm like, yeah, let me look at these little details, see if there's something extra. Okay, and I might end this off here. Oh yeah, and I like how, yeah, can relate to like a real life type of event. You know, maybe disaster discovery that's happened in real life. Yeah, that should be it. Oh yeah, and then yeah, this one, right? Yeah, I remember seeing this Fate Zero. Yeah, that was, wow. Yeah, I made a reaction to this like a while ago, but yeah, this whole scene, I was like, dang, yeah, that's like very unfortunate, but he just has to do what he has to do. You know, it could have spread, and yeah, there just won't be any point at well, let's see, because yeah, he would probably be able to use the Grail to make a wish, but we all know what happens with the Grail. Usually you just don't get your wish, or it's just better off, well, for me at least, how I view it, it's just better off not even trying to make a wish in general. Because yeah, something bad is just gonna happen, or just something extra to where, yeah, here we go with all this, and then yeah, it's just a whole lot of different things just happen, just be going on. But yeah, you just had to do it. I mean, take out a few to save the many. You know, this, you don't want to do that. You know, your main goal is to keep people protected and, you know, not kill. You know, you don't want to kill people, but if you have to, you just have to. If you want to be that hero, you know, savior and all, yeah, you just gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. Even yeah, Shido from the what was it, Miyuverse? Yeah, just from there, because the other Shido from like the main, from what we seen like in Prism EMIYA, yeah, the main one, Yeah, that's kind of a little different, I think. But he had a Miyu verse. Yeah, he was ready to risk it all. I think he was. Yeah, okay, yeah. There's a lot that be going on that I gotta remember, but yeah, he was ready to risk it all. Like just for, I think just he was trying to save Miyu over the world. I think that's what it was, and they actually could have saved the world. Yeah, because it was like deteriorating, and then yeah, and there was just barely anybody there. So like, he'd rather keep Miyu safe. I think this is what it was. Yeah, I'd have to go back. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, he was trying to save Miyu over the world in general. I think it was something like that. But yeah, I'm gonna just end it off here. Yeah, I already know I've been rambling and talking for a little minute. So I hope you guys did enjoy this. Make sure you like, subscribe again, and yeah, I'll just see you guys in the next one.